As of the 22nd of August 1945, the Volkswagenwerk GmbH has been commissioned to build 20,000 cars for the British military administration. A fortnight later, the volume is doubled to 40,000. Just 6 months after the British take control, the civilian series production of the car that will later become known as the Beetle begins on the 27th of December 1945. Thus, the factory in Wolfsburg becomes the first car plant in Germany to resume production after the war. Despite this, its outlook for the future remains fraught and uncertain.
Volkswagen was in a precarious position. There was a decision taken during the war that all factories built specifically to manufacture war materials would be destroyed at the end of the war. They would be blown up. Other factories, which were deemed to be surplus to the new low level of industry being imposed on Germany after the war. Initially, the American Morgenthau plan was for a very low level of industry. That was modified, and Germany was to have a reasonable level of industry. But factories that were not required to meet that level were offered to any country that had been at war with Germany as war reparations. So Volkswagen was theoretically on the reparations list. It was available for anybody who wanted to take it away.
The option of dismantling the factory and selling it off leads to great uncertainty. No one knows whether the factory actually has a future. But for the time being at least, the order to produce 40,000 vehicles means a certain degree of security.
Because it was required for the occupation requirement, a reserve was put on it for 4 years. Nothing would go for 4 years.
As a result of this postponement, the military administration turns its attention to the way the company is organized.
I suggested we should have a British board, equivalent to the German Aufsichtsrat, a supervisory board, where all the Allied interests would meet. So this British board had a chairman. The chair was taken by Radcliffe. Charles Radcliffe I first met about the end of 1945. He is a great man. I liked him a lot. I had a very high regard for Charles Radcliffe, and we became very good friends. He sorted the fools out. He knew what he wanted, and once he got his eye on the target, he went for it. An order for the cars was one thing, to produce them was another matter. First of all, there was the factory to be put in some sort of order to get production started. Another huge problem was the availability of materials, the steel, the textiles, the seats, the batteries, the tires, the glass, as the whole of German industry was virtually knocked out by the end of the war. And we were given a ration of steel and of glass and so on. Not very much, but enough to get production going. The target we asked for and got was 1,000 cars a month.
Aside from procuring materials and fuel for the power plant, another major problem is recruiting a workforce. During the war, forced labourers were made to produce munitions. Once the war ended, they were liberated by the Americans, and most of them returned to their home countries soon afterwards.
At the end of the war, there was a nucleus of German there, but they were mainly tool makers, the fitters and so on, but not production workers, or builders for building the factory, repairing the factory buildings. I talked to our manpower division, and they were very happy to receive the call because they had the problem of releasing Germans from prisoner of war camps who had nowhere to go because they come from Eastern Germany or from areas that had been heavily bombed. And so it was arranged that Volkswagenwerk would offer jobs to them, civilian jobs, ordinary wages, at Wolfsburg. Very many of the workers there are still wearing German army uniforms. It's all they had. The fellows on the production lines and the fellows rebuilding the factory buildings, they worked extremely hard in very poor conditions, very little food, no proper housing.
The shortages are ubiquitous. The workers live with their families in cramped wooden shacks, with very basic sanitation, very little in the way of household effects and bedding, and a lack of clothing, heating fuels and food. The people in charge on the German and British side make a huge effort to provide the essentials. Among other things, they grow grain on the factory premises. As early as in the summer of 1945, just a few weeks after taking control, the British military administration appoints a representative for the employees. In October, the first democratic elections for a works council are held. At their first meeting on November the 27th, the 12 elected representatives of the workforce elect Willy Hilgers as their first chairman. The new Works Council is under the supervision of the military government. Its most important task is to ensure that the scant supplies are justly distributed. Among other things, it sets up a social and economic commission and a commission for entertainment and sports. All these contribute to maintaining industrial peace within the company. However, the future of the factory remains uncertain.